After the cancer diagnosis, I had no idea how to break the news to my family. The doctor's report had been sitting on the coffee table for 3 days, untouched. No one asked me a thing. It wasn't until the 4th day, when I didn't make dinner because of a follow-up appointment at the hospital, that the phone finally started ringing off the hook. It was 5:30 when I left the doctor's office, right in the middle of the evening rush hour. With one hand clutching my medical file and a small bag of prescriptions, and the other carrying groceries, I fought my way onto a packed city bus. That's when my phone started buzzing like crazy. A kind young man offered to hold my grocery bag for a moment, leaving me just enough space to dig into my coat pocket and answer the call. Madison's sharp voice echoed through the receiver. "Eleanor, why haven't you picked up Leo from school?" His teacher just called. "He's the only kid left in his class and he's crying his eyes out." Panic washed over me. I asked quickly, "Has anyone picked him up yet?" "I told Caleb this morning he needed to get his son today. I had a doctor's appointment this afternoon." Before I could finish, she cut me off with an irritated huff. "My God, Eleanor, what could possibly be more important than Leo? He's still at school. You need to go now." "I can't go," she added angrily. "I've already made plans for dinner and shopping with my friends." "What about Caleb?" "He's been in meetings all afternoon. He probably forgot, as usual. It's not worth bothering him with these little things." I opened my mouth to tell her that I wouldn't make it in time either, and that maybe Arthur could go instead, but she had already hung up. Just before the call cut off, I clearly heard her complaining to her friend. "Caleb's mom is so useless. She can't even handle one simple favor. She's totally unreliable." I felt a heavy tightness in my chest. My hand hovered over the screen, about to call Arthur. But then I froze. The doctor's words echoed in my mind. "Your body is already very weak. You'll need someone to be with you during the upcoming treatments. And you must avoid stress and household chores as much as possible. So be it. If I'm not good enough to help anymore, maybe it's time everyone took on their own responsibilities. He's their son, after all, not mine." I just stood there, stunned, on the bus as it rolled past 2 more stops without me even noticing. That's when my phone rang again. This time, it was Arthur. "Eleanor, have you been running around all day? Do you realize Leo is still at school waiting for someone to pick him up? I just got home and Madison called me in a panic. She said she tried calling you and couldn't get through. Why haven't you gone to get him yet? The teacher has been waiting there all this time. Can you imagine how upset Leo must be?" His voice droned on, full of reprimand. I felt an even tighter squeeze in my chest, but I remained silent. When he finally stopped talking, I replied in a quiet but firm voice, "That boy has a mother and a father. Maybe they should stop relying on an old woman for everything." Perhaps it was my tone cold, distant, something he'd never heard from me before that caught him off guard. He paused, then snapped back. "What kind of talk is that, Eleanor? Don't take this the wrong way, but Leo is our grandson. Is this really the attitude a grandmother should have? Forget it. I'll go get Leo myself today. You just get home and make dinner. The kids have been working hard all day. It's not right for them to come home to an empty table." I wanted to tell him that I wasn't feeling well either, that my body, after all the hospital visits, was already exhausted, but the words caught in my throat. I had grown accustomed to not complaining. Years of swallowing every ache, every bit of tiredness, every feeling, because what good did it do? At best, a dismissive, "You're being dramatic." So, for the first time, I didn't respond. I ended the call before he could say another word. Arthur has lived an easy life. Born into a cultured family, he was the type of man people used to describe as refined and distinguished even in his youth. His career flowed smoothly from the start, and just this year, he retired from his position as the director of the City Art Museum. Decades immersed in the arts had given him a calm, cultured elegance that still turned heads even at 67 years old. That, and the fact that he never had to worry about the messy parts of life. And honestly, he never had to. From childhood, his mother handled everything, down to the smallest detail. After we got married, I picked up right where she left off, seamlessly. He never had to worry about the house. He never did a load of laundry, never even washed his own socks. Arthur firmly believes that a gentleman stays out of the kitchen. Housework, in his view, only serves to tarnish the purity of his artistic aura. Even after retiring, he's kept himself as busy as ever, thriving at the local community and senior center's choir practice, Latin ballroom, violin lessons. His schedule is more packed than when he was working. Everyone calls him Professor Arthur, the talented Renaissance man, admired and adored. His calendar is always full. Our children know better than to expect him to pitch in. No one ever asks him to help with school pickups or babysitting. Then there's me. I studied painting too. Back in college, we were both oil painting majors. I was promising, my professors thought so too. But then I met Arthur and fell deeply in love. And after that, well, life just sort of took over. The years flew by in a blur of housework, taking care of Arthur, raising our son, and then our grandson. Always rushing, always busy, but nothing in all of it felt truly mine. There's no point in dwelling on it now. As the bus drove through familiar streets, I realized we were getting close to home. But for some reason, my heart felt heavier with every passing block. Maybe it was just the first signs of the cancer, the fatigue, the dull ache in my bones. But suddenly, I had no desire to go home anymore. But the truth was, I had nowhere else to go. My parents had long since passed away, and most of my old friends had their own families and their own busy lives. I stared out the bus window, and for the first time, a profound sadness washed over me. 65 years of life, and I had no one to talk to, not a single soul. About 15 minutes later, my phone rang for a third time. "Eleanor, why aren't you home making dinner yet?" "Mia is throwing a tantrum, says she's starving. Caleb is about to get home too, and I don't cook, you know that. Are we supposed to just wait around for another half hour for you? What's gotten into you lately? The older you get, the less reliable you become. Where are you? And why aren't you taking care of the house?" Arthur's voice wasn't particularly loud, but on the noisy bus, I could still hear every word clearly. There was a time, long ago, when his voice captivated me deep and steady, a voice that never failed to soothe me, even during arguments. But now, every word felt like a slap in the face. It turns out that even the most pleasant voice can turn ugly when it's used to scold and belittle. The rose-colored glasses through which I had viewed him for decades shattered in an instant. I didn't even bother to respond with emotion. You two are over 100 years old combined. Can neither of you function on your own? What will you do if I die tomorrow? Starve? He went quiet, visibly stunned. Before he could reply, I ended the call again. He didn't call back. Arthur has always had his pride and his temper. He never asks for help or backs down. And I had hung up on him twice in one day. That was more than his ego could handle. But a few minutes later, my son Caleb called. Apparently, my phone had turned into a hotline today. "Mom, what's wrong with you lately? You didn't pick up Leo, you didn't cook, and now you're arguing with Dad. He's so upset he's lost his appetite. Come on, we're just trying to have a normal evening. You're not getting any younger either. What are you trying to prove?" He had barely gotten the words out when his sister Megan snatched the phone from him. Her voice was equally full of complaint. "Seriously, Mom, you've been slacking off a bit lately. It's so late, and dinner still isn't ready. I'm starving. We all came over for dinner, and Mia said she wants Grandma's spaghetti bolognese, her favorite. You'd better get back soon, or she's going to get hysterical again." I said nothing. I remembered how, when they were both getting married and buying houses, they made sure to pick homes just a few blocks from ours. They said they couldn't bear to be far from us. Since then, unless it was a weekend or a special occasion for dining out, they came here for dinner almost every single weeknight. I treated Leo and Mia equally, picking them up from school, feeding them, and helping them with homework. On most days, I'd pick up Mia from preschool, go straight to Leo's elementary school, buy groceries on the way, and rush home to cook for everyone. It had become our routine, a big, lively dinner every night. But since Mia's other grandmother was visiting, I hadn't needed to pick her up. Still, I didn't know what to say now. Should I blame myself for caring too much over the years? Or should I blame myself for not raising my children right, raising a house full of dependents who never learned to stand on their own? After a long pause, I replied flatly, "You can have dinner without me tonight. I'm not coming home for dinner. After saying that, I turned off my phone. Finally, the world was quiet. Somewhere along the way, the bus had already passed my stop. Darkness was settling over the city, and unfamiliar streets unfolded outside the window. But for the first time tonight, I had a seat all to myself. How ironic, really. I skipped a single dinner, and suddenly everyone was coming after me as if I'd committed some terrible crime. And yet, the breast cancer diagnosis report had been sitting on the living room table for 3 full days. Not one person had asked me about it. They sit on that couch every day, glued to their phones, watching television, playing games. Even the fruit I carefully replace with fresh ones each day they never ask, never notice. They just reach over and help themselves. But for some reason, not one of them has so much as glanced at the medical report sitting right beside it. Was it just because my name was printed on the cover? Did that make it invisible to everyone by default? Like me, living in that house for decades, giving and giving, but never truly being seen. My children always say, "Mom, you were so lucky to marry Dad. You never had to work and got to be the elegant wife of an art museum director." Relatives talk glowingly about how Arthur carried the whole family, provided everything, and raised 2 exemplary children. What an extraordinary man. The pain in my chest sharpened again, and without realizing it, tears had already started streaming down my face. I turned my head toward the window, hoping no one would see me crying. At my age, I'm always afraid of looking pathetic to strangers. The city lights outside blurred into a veil of tears flickering, distant, unreachable. So many lit-up homes across the city, yet not a single one of those lights felt like it was truly mine. Just then, a pale hand appeared in my field of vision, offering me a tissue. It was the same kind young woman from before. "Ma'am, are you all right? Here, take this." She smiled gently. "The breeze by the window is pretty strong. Be careful not to catch a cold. Oh, and I saw the bag of medicine you're carrying. I thought maybe you weren't feeling well." I took the tissue and nodded, my voice catching as I whispered, "Thank you." But somehow, the more I wiped, the harder the tears fell, until it felt like everything inside me was finally pouring out. A simple act of kindness from a stranger, something my own family hadn't shown me in years. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I made a quiet, unbreakable decision. If love has to be begged for, and a home has to be earned only through sacrifice, then maybe it was never really mine to begin with. And if that's the case, then I don't want it anymore. When the bus reached its final stop, everyone else got off. I stood up, swaying a bit as I grabbed my bags. The young woman noticed and immediately stepped in again, taking most of the weight from my arms without hesitation. "Thank you so much," I said, genuinely touched. "You've been such a help today. You must be exhausted too. Traveling this far after work must be tough." She waved it off with a smile. "Not at all. I'm actually just an intern at the hospital where you had your appointment." Then she added, almost sheepishly, "I got off several stops ago, but you just seemed like you weren't doing too well. I just wanted to make sure you were okay, so I stayed on with you. Do you live nearby?" I froze for a second, a wave of guilt washing over me. "Oh no, I don't live around here at all. I am so sorry. Let me call a cab to take you home. Thank you for worrying." "Really, I'm fine. I just feel terrible for troubling you." "You don't have to apologize," she said gently. "If anything, you should take a cab home. You're not well. Don't push yourself. I can just grab a bus back from across the street. It's easy." "No," I said firmly. "You've already done too much. This was my fault, and I'm not letting you go back alone because of me." I insisted on walking her to the curb and hailed a taxi, seeing her in. First, I asked the driver to take her home. Then, I gave him instructions to go to mine. I hadn't brought anything with me today. I was only supposed to be going for a routine checkup. Now, I needed to go back and start packing my things. As she was getting out of the car, she turned back with one last warm smile. "Ma'am, you know, medicine has come a long way. Don't lose hope. Everything might just turn out okay." I waved goodbye, tears almost escaping again. Somehow, all the heaviness, the bitterness of the day, felt a little lighter, healed just a little by the kindness of a stranger I hadn't even known an hour ago. On my way back, I passed a restaurant just on the edge of our neighborhood, one with a reputation for being exclusive and expensive. I had heard Arthur and the kids mention it more than once. They had only ever been there for formal dinners or special occasions, and they always raved about how refined it was. Yet, not once did any of them ever think to take me there. Perhaps they never saw me as someone who belonged in places like that. To them, I was just a homemaker, someone who saved money, cooked, did laundry, not someone who needed to experience fine dining. Without much thought, I turned and walked in. For the first time in my life, I sat down by myself and treated myself to a proper, elegant dinner. The groceries I'd bought earlier were long gone, tossed in a trash can when I got off the bus. I used to fret over every dollar, trying to save for my children and grandchildren. The fewer luxuries I allowed myself, the more I could leave for them. Even calling a cab used to feel like a splurge I had to justify. But now that I'm sick, I realize that if there's anything I still want to do, I must do it. No one knows how many days I have left. So I tasted every bite of the meal they talked so much about and quietly realized it wasn't that special. I'm not a fool who can't tell good from bad. I was simply never given the chance to choose for myself. After dinner, I walked slowly home, letting the food settle in my stomach. By the time I reached the door, it was past 10 o'clock. The moment I opened it, a heavy mix of food and alcohol smells hit me. The house was a wreck. Dinner had just ended, and the dining table looked like a battlefield, with plates everywhere, crumpled napkins, and leftover chicken wing bones strewn across the surface. The living room was no better, as if a small hurricane had torn through it. Madison and Megan were lounging on the couch, chewing on fried chicken wings, their eyes glued to the television. Leo and Mia were sitting nearby, mimicking the adults, each with a bag of chips in their hands, glued to their tablets, fingers flying across the screens as they played games. In the backyard, Arthur and Caleb, along with Megan's husband, were drinking beer and chatting about retirement plans and stock market trends, as if there wasn't a single problem in the world worth worrying about. Arthur had always had stomach problems, and it was usually me who kept a close eye on him, making sure he stayed away from alcohol. But tonight, he was drinking freely. No doubt his stomach would keep him up later, aching in protest. I walked through the door, slipped into my house slippers, and just stood there for a moment. No one even looked up. The first to notice me was Madison. She glanced at me briefly, an impatient look on her face, and then turned back to the TV without a word. I walked straight through the room, heading quietly toward the master bedroom. But just as I turned the corner into the hallway, I came face to face with someone I did not expect to see. She looked equally startled. "Eleanor, you're finally back," she said, trying to sound caring. "I was just telling Arthur he should call you. It's late, and I was worried it wasn't safe for you to be out alone." I froze. The truth is, Genevieve's presence in my home wasn't new. Since she moved into one of the luxury condos nearby last year, she had visited a few times, always as a polite guest. But now, seeing her emerge from my bedroom, wearing a set of soft, silky loungewear, her hair tousled and her eyes sleepy, something inside me twisted. Genevieve, Arthur's old flame, the girl of his dreams, a former star of the East Coast Ballet Conservatory, the elegant goddess who held every young man's heart in the palm of her hand. Time, it seemed, had treated her with particular kindness. She still carried that same natural elegance. Her beauty, refined by years, hadn't dimmed one bit. Back then, Arthur had many admirers, but only Genevieve ever truly captured his heart. They had been entangled for years, never officially together, but never really apart. Then, right after graduation, she married a real estate tycoon 2 decades her senior and moved abroad. That's when I stepped in. With Genevieve out of the picture, I seized my moment. I slowly closed the distance until I finally became Arthur's wife. He never offered me romance, though. He gave me a clear condition: if we married, I would have to give up my career entirely and dedicate myself to supporting his artistic pursuits at home. And I did, faithfully, year after year. I fulfilled my end of the bargain. I thought I had earned my place. I thought that chapter with Genevieve was long buried. Arthur never spoke of her again. We both pretended those years had never happened. But when Genevieve returned and visited for the first time, I remember how tense and awkward their reunion had been. The air between them practically crackled with unresolved history. Still, it wasn't long after that for Arthur to rekindle the connection. And it was clear things had progressed further than I had been told. Genevieve's voice wasn't exactly subtle. It carried across the room, drawing all eyes toward us. Caleb lit up when he saw me. "Mom, you're finally back. Where have you been so late? We tried calling you so many times and you didn't answer." Then he turned toward the couch and called out, "Good thing Megan thought fast and ordered Mexican takeout. We just finished eating. You can start clearing the table, doing the dishes, and mopping now." My son-in-law chimed in with a smirk, waving his beer bottle. "Eleanor, how about you whip us up something extra, like some popcorn or a cheese board? Arthur's in such a good mood tonight, I think he's ready for another round." Before I could open my mouth, Genevieve jumped in, flustered and eager to explain. "Eleanor, please, don't worry. I didn't mean to overstep. I just felt a little dizzy earlier, and it was too noisy out here. Arthur suggested I lie down in your room for a bit. The kids were all in the living room. I swear it's not what you think." Arthur, hearing her, immediately put down his drink and rushed to her side. "Genevieve, are you feeling any better now?" he asked with concern, his eyes fixed on her face. Only then did he turn to me, his tone so cold it could freeze glass. "She is our guest, Eleanor. Do you have to act like this? Do you even remember where your own front door is? I was starting to think you got lost. Look at the time. This behavior is completely unacceptable." I lifted my head and looked straight at him. A bitter smile played at the corner of my lips. "Oh yes. And how about a guest ending up in the master bedroom in the middle of the night? What kind of behavior is that supposed to be? And you, Arthur Blackett, retired art museum director, champion of refinement and elegance, what exactly do you call bringing a single woman into your wife's bed when she's not home? Is that your idea of grace?" His face darkened instantly. "You're deliberately stirring up drama. This is pure slander." Genevieve blushed, visibly uncomfortable. She tugged lightly on his sleeve and whispered, "Arthur, stop. It's my fault. If I had known Eleanor would be upset, I never would have used that room." But my chest was already burning, my breath coming in short, furious gasps. I didn't want to hear another word. I turned and walked toward the bedroom, not bothering to reply. The tension in the living room was suddenly suffocating. No one said a word. Megan ran after me and grabbed my arm, trying to stop me. "Mom, what is wrong with you?" Megan asked, her tone laced with irritation. "You're being so harsh." Genevieve wasn't feeling well. She had a bit of a cold. Dad just invited her over for dinner, so she wouldn't be alone while she was sick. She paused, adding with a reproachful tone, "And honestly, you were a little out of line today. So what if Dad said something to you?" Leo was stuck at school. Of course we were all worried. Families are supposed to look out for each other. Caleb nodded beside her, softening his tone a bit as he stepped closer. "Megan's right, Mom. You've been at home all day. Maybe you don't realize how draining it is out there. We're constantly running around. Coming home to find no dinner, it's frustrating. Maybe we were a little harsh, but don't take it personally." I looked at these children, my children, and felt a cold emptiness settle deep inside me. Not one word of concern, not a single question about where I had been, if I had eaten, if something was wrong. Just judgments, excuses, and expectations. Then Madison's gaze fell on the pharmacy bag in my hand. Her mouth curved into a sneer as she chimed in, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Exactly, Eleanor. Leo was almost crying from hunger earlier. He's still so little. What if something had happened to him from skipping one meal?" She glanced at the shopping bag and scoffed. "Looks like you had a relaxing day. Buying all those supplements again? I've told you 1,000 times they're a scam. Such a waste of money. You're better off spending it on presents for Leo and Mia. At least they'll enjoy it." She let out a small laugh and added, "If you're really that bored, maybe you could take a cue from Genevieve. At least she knows how to dress well and carry herself with taste. She actually looks like a perfect match for Arthur." My face turned to stone. Caleb quickly tugged on Madison's sleeve, clearly sensing the escalating tension in the air. "What the hell, Madison? You've had too much to drink." And for the record, my mom has always been frugal. She hardly ever spends money on herself." He turned to me, trying to soften the blow. "Mom, it's late. The dishes can wait until tomorrow. Why don't you just help the kids get ready for bed?" "Mia said she wants to have a sleepover tonight." I slowly turned my gaze to each of them, these faces I knew so well, and felt only a cold weariness seeping into my bones. Not a shred of warmth, not even a trace of genuine concern for me as a person. They all rushed to assign me tasks, to scold me, to use me. But no one asked if I was okay, if I had eaten, or why I had come home so late. This so-called family affection didn't even compare to the kindness of a stranger on a city bus. Sometimes it's not anger that takes over, but numbness. I finally spoke, my voice quiet and even, but each word landed like a stone. "There's something I need to formally say to all of you. You are adults now. You have your own lives, your own families. It's time to stop being so dependent. As of today, I am no longer your unpaid servant. No more school pickups, no more dinner, no more taken for granted household chores. If you need them done, you figure it out yourselves. And if any of you feel the sudden urge to take care of some poor, frail old friend, go right ahead. I won't stop you. I won't interfere. But don't you worry about me. I won't be needing anything from you either." As my words landed, the entire room fell into a stunned silence. Everyone exchanged uneasy glances. "Mom, what are you saying?" Caleb was the first to speak, his voice laced with disbelief. "We all work full-time. Without you, we can't even pick the kids up from school." Megan immediately chimed in. "Exactly. We don't get off work until 6 o'clock or later. How are we supposed to come home and cook, too? Are you planning on letting us starve?" Madison scoffed, her tone annoyed. "Eleanor, it's not like we think of you as a maid or anything, but Arthur is always busy with his community activities. Someone has to take care of things at home. And honestly, you don't have a job. Helping out a little isn't that big of a deal, is it? It's just something to keep you from getting bored." One by one, they all stepped forward, trying to persuade me, reasoning with me as if I were the one being unreasonable. But all I felt was a slow, burning fire rising in my chest. "I am not bored," I interrupted coldly. "And if you truly believe all this is not that big of a deal, then you try doing it yourselves for one full day. See how that works out for you. I am a human being, not your unpaid housekeeper. I have been running this house non-stop for decades. Now, it's my turn to rest." Megan, noticing the shift in my tone, immediately softened her voice, putting her arm around me like a child trying to soothe a parent. "Mom, we're not saying you shouldn't rest. But you're not working. Being at home is resting, isn't it? Really, you're just upset because Genevieve came over tonight, right? She didn't do anything wrong. We were all here too. She's your old classmate, and she wasn't feeling well. Dad was just helping her out. What's wrong with that?" The more she talked, the tighter my chest felt, the dull ache under my ribs flaring up again. I gently removed her arm and looked her straight in the eye. My voice was quiet but firm, each word laced with purpose. "First, being home does not mean I have been resting. If you don't believe me, try taking turns with the housework starting tomorrow. Then you can tell me how rested you feel. Second, Genevieve is your father's guest, not mine. I won't say anything about what happens between them, but don't use me to smooth things over just because you don't want to face the truth." Perhaps it was the firmness in my tone, something none of them had ever heard from me before. But suddenly, the room was completely silent. Even the air felt heavier. Then, Genevieve stepped forward, dabbing the corners of her eyes with delicate fingers. Her voice trembled slightly, just enough to be noticed. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor. This was all my fault. I never meant to get between you and Arthur. I've stayed too long tonight. I should go." Without waiting for a reply, she rushed toward the front door, gathering her things as she slipped on her shoes. It was clear she wanted to disappear as quickly as possible. The kids, flustered, ran after her, murmuring reassurances and apologies. Before the door closed, a loud slam echoed from the dining room. Arthur had slammed his fist on the table so hard it made the dishes rattle. "Enough, Eleanor." His voice boomed through the room. "You've been acting strangely since this afternoon. Coming home late was bad enough, but now you're picking fights left and right. Let's be honest. Is this really just about dinner? Or is it because I was looking after Genevieve? Why do you keep dredging up the past? She had a fever, running at 106 degrees. And you still want to make a scene? His voice kept rising, sharp and impatient. For God's sake, a person's heart is supposed to get bigger with age. But your mind just shrinks every year. When did you become so petty? And with that, he grabbed his coat and phone and stormed out after the others, without so much as a backward glance. Since you all say, I've become petty with age, fine, let me be petty all the way. I went straight back to the bedroom and started packing. Not just for a night, not just to escape that bed. I was leaving this house for good. I didn't want to spend another day under this roof. Besides, the doctor had made it clear, I needed peace, not stress. But I hadn't been inside for half an hour, and my chest was already tight, my breath short. Arthur wasn't gone long when the kids came back, assuming this was just another emotional outburst. Their voices drifted to me from the hallway, trying to smooth things over. Mom, Dad was just walking Genevieve home. It's late, she shouldn't be out by herself. Yeah, come on, Mom. Sure, Genevieve is elegant and well-kept, but if there was really something between her and Dad, it would have happened years ago, not now. Exactly. Dad's 67 years old. What's he going to do at this point? Mom, we'll wash the dishes ourselves tonight. Just get some rest, okay? Tomorrow morning you can make breakfast and take them to school like always. Their voices blurred together, a dull hum of rationalization and delegation, each word only making the air around me feel heavier. I closed the bedroom door without a word. Packing didn't take long. I didn't need much. A few changes of clothes, some jewelry, my documents, a charger. That was it. After decades in this house, it was almost laughable how little was worth taking. The 2 rental properties my parents left me had always been in my name. The rent was mine. Plus, with the money I had quietly saved over the years, pinching every penny I could, I had enough to live comfortably on my own. I used to plan on transferring the properties to my children when I turned 80. And now? Good thing I hadn't done it yet. Good thing I still had a fallback. As I pulled my suitcase out of the bedroom, Megan's family had already left. Caleb was in the bathroom giving Leo a bath. No one saw me. I didn't care. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out and didn't look back. The night air hit me like a quiet relief, but I stood there for a moment, unsure where to go next. They always said I was sheltered, that I hadn't seen the world. Maybe now was the time. And if this illness truly had no cure, then I sure as hell wasn't going to end my life in a kitchen or a laundry room. The doctor said my radiation therapy wouldn't start until next week, so I had a few days free. Why not use them? I didn't know how to book plane tickets online, so I did the simplest thing I could think of. I hailed a cab and told the driver to take me straight to the airport. Standing in the terminal, watching the destination board cycle through name after name, I picked a city I had always wanted to visit. I walked up to the counter and bought a ticket for the next available flight. Before boarding, I hesitated for a second, then sent a single message to the family, just enough to keep them from calling the police. I'm going on a trip. Don't bother me. Then I turned off my phone. It was an overnight flight, short, smooth, and by the time the wheels touched down, the sky was still dark. I had landed in Portland. I had seen it in travel videos. They called it the City of Roses, a botanical paradise on the West Coast. I'd always wanted to visit. If I had any passion left in life, it was for plants. My balcony was always packed with greenery, every inch overflowing with little sparks of life that reminded me there was still something to look forward to in my day. Arthur never had time for travel. He always said Portland was too humid, that the air there is sticky, not elegant. But I didn't need elegance. I just needed joy. When I turned my phone back on, a flood of messages came through like a broken dam. They had all seen my note, and now they were panicking. Mom, if you're gone, who's going to pick up Leo tomorrow? No one made dinner. Dad doesn't know how. What are we supposed to eat? Mom, don't be so stubborn. You wouldn't go on vacation by yourself. You probably just booked a hotel nearby. You'll be home tomorrow. Seriously, you don't even know how to use apps. You don't have any family around. What if you get scammed? What if you get lost on the street? The more I read, the deeper my frown grew. And then I saw it, the final message that made me laugh out loud, cold and bitter, from Arthur. The older you get, the more childish you become. I'm curious to see if this house can still run without you. Since they couldn't stop buzzing in my ear, I decided to embrace silence completely. I blocked them all. Every number, every notification, I put them on Do Not Disturb. There honestly wasn't a single word from any of them that I wanted to hear. But, of course, it didn't take long for Arthur's proud. The house will manage just fine without you to come back and slap him in the face. The next morning, the moment I turned my phone back on, I was met with an avalanche of unread messages. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Arthur was rushed to the hospital. Unsurprisingly, it was his chronic stomach illness acting up, triggered by that spicy Mexican takeout and the alcohol he insisted on drinking last night. At first, he tried to tough it out, convinced he could just push through. But by midnight, the pain had him doubled over. He searched the whole house for medication, but nothing. Finally, he woke Caleb up and asked for help. No luck. Then came the frantic calls to me. Dozens of missed calls, voicemails, text messages, but I had slept soundly after a full day of sightseeing and hadn't heard a single peep. The moment I turned my phone on, Caleb's call came through almost instantly. "Mom, you finally answered." His voice sounded exhausted. "Dad had a terrible flare-up last night. His stomach pain got so bad we had to take him to the ER. I've been with him since midnight, and I still have to go to work this morning, plus drop Leo off at school. I can't handle all of this. Come on, Mom, don't be like this. Just come back and take care of him." I listened silently, then replied calmly. "Did you not understand what I said yesterday? I'm on vacation. Please don't bother me." And I hung up. Then I went a step further. I blocked all their numbers. No more distractions, no more interruptions. I wasn't going to let anything ruin my trip. I hired a private VIP tour guide and spent the most carefree, liberating week I've had in decades exploring Portland. I visited all the major attractions, tasted all the food that had intrigued me, and finally made it to the botanical garden I had always dreamed of seeing. The biggest surprise? I even had a full-on travel photo shoot. My personal guide was incredibly thoughtful, not just showing me around, but acting as my photographer and creative director, capturing every moment of my journey with care and precision. When I saw the photos afterward, I barely recognized myself. Bright eyes, glowing skin, radiant energy, there was a lightness to my expression I hadn't seen in years. It turns out, I could shine too, just like Genevieve. My guide even taught me how to use travel apps on my phone, ride-sharing services, flight and hotel booking, maps, and travel reviews. I finally knew how to navigate the world without needing anyone's help. For years, whenever I asked my kids to teach me something simple, how to look up a recipe, how to use a new app, they always just brushed me off, too impatient to bother. Not anymore. Now I didn't need anyone. The times hadn't left me behind after all. Day by day, I felt lighter, freer. Even my body felt stronger, more energetic. But when I finally returned home after that beautiful week away and turned my phone back on, what greeted me wasn't peace. It was chaos, as always. A full-blown domestic circus waiting right at my doorstep. In the end, it all came down to this: once the tireless, all-knowing, never-complaining supermom disappeared from the household, everything began to fall apart. And only then, only when they finally started looking for help, did they realize just how deep the problem really was. Hiring a maid to cook and clean didn't solve everything, because she wouldn't look after the children. A full-time nanny didn't do housework. The caregiver who could look after Mia didn't handle picking up Leo, who was now in first grade, so they needed a second nanny just for the afternoon shift. A single helper wasn't enough. Not by a long shot. And on top of it all, Arthur was still hospitalized, needing constant care. That's when they finally realized what I had been all along: a full-service, on-call, multi-skilled domestic operator who charged nothing, asked for nothing, and even provided emotional support on demand. Suddenly, the tune began to change. What started as accusations and complaints turned into cloying attempts to coax me back home. Even Leo and Mia were taught to take turns calling, their little voices chirping into the voicemail. "Grandma, we miss you. Come back soon." The texts followed, sweet but desperate. "Mom, your protest has gone on long enough. Please come home. We really need you." And at 3 o'clock in the morning, one last message from Caleb, raw and heartbreaking. "Mom, I can't do this anymore." Upon landing, I didn't go straight home. I sat in the cab, watching the familiar roads pass by, wondering how it would feel to be back. But some things needed closure. As we reached the neighborhood, I noticed a small stage had been set up in the square. Apparently, the community was hosting an event. I watched it absently until two familiar figures caught my eye. Arthur and Genevieve. He was in a tailored black suit, she in a flowing crimson dress. The two of them were dancing a passionate tango under the lights. Their steps were quick, fluid, impeccably in sync. Their gazes met with a subtle tension and an unspoken electricity. Every turn, every lift, every glance between them felt like a whispered confession, a story told not in words, but in motion. I stood there silently, watching. Oddly enough, I felt no anger, just a faint, dull ache rising in my chest. They had always been a pair, meant to be together, in a way I could never compete with. I once fooled myself into thinking I had found a gap in their story, slipping in while she was away, pretending it was fate. But in truth, things that don't belong to you, no matter how tightly you hold on, will always cost you something in the end. The music stopped. The crowd erupted in applause. Arthur looked out at the audience, scanning the faces, and then froze when he saw me. For a moment, we both just stood there. I looked down, said nothing, turned quietly and walked away, the wheels of my suitcase making a soft, rumbling noise behind me. I hadn't gone far when I heard footsteps, Arthur catching up. He took the suitcase handle from me without a word and started walking ahead. Neither of us spoke as we walked home. When we reached the door, he stopped, then said quietly, "Eleanor, I'm glad you're back." I hesitated, then slowly followed him inside. The house was tidier than I expected. Clearly someone had hired a cleaning service. But my beloved houseplants told another story. Most of them had withered from neglect, slumping sadly under the weight of a week's indifference. No one had cared enough to keep them alive. I sat down, ready to finally have the conversation I needed to have. But just as I opened my mouth, the front door swung open. Genevieve walked in, bright and cheerful, her heels clicking softly on the floor. She was glowing, full of life, confident and smiling as if the world was hers. "Arthur, why didn't you wait for me?" Genevieve's voice drifted in as she stepped through the door, a soft complaint mixed with mild surprise. The moment she saw me, her expression faltered. Her gaze shifted to the suitcase beside me, and instinctively, her hand tucked the house key she was holding behind her back. "Eleanor, you're back?" she said with a forced smile, trying to cover her unease. "Why didn't you let us know sooner? We would have picked you up." She came over and sat beside me with a polite smile, continuing her rehearsed explanation. "Oh, I meant to tell you earlier. Arthur was discharged a few days ago, and the house is just a mess. Caleb and Megan were worried the temporary cleaners wouldn't do a good job and that the kids and Arthur would be left unsupervised, so they asked me to move in for a few days to help out. Don't worry, I've been staying in the guest room." I just nodded, offering no reply. Genevieve continued, her tone breezy, almost too breezy. "The truth is, if Arthur wasn't so resistant to hiring a full-time live-in maid, none of this would have been necessary. This can all be outsourced. You don't have to wear yourself out trying to do it all. That part, I knew all too well. Arthur had always been that stubborn. Despite his income, he never allowed outsiders into our home. For all these years, we never once hired a live-in maid. But I hadn't come back to rehash old habits or make small talk. My time was precious now, and I had no intention of wasting it. I turned to face him and caught his eye. His eyes were fixed on me too, an unreadable flicker behind them. I didn't bother beating around the bush. I went straight to the point. "Arthur," I said calmly, "I want a divorce." His expression changed instantly. Shock, panic, even a flicker of helplessness, an emotion I had rarely seen on his face. But it only lasted a moment before he pulled himself together again, reverting to that cool, calculated composure he wore like armor. Eleanor, that's not funny, he said quietly. At your age, this kind of joke isn't appropriate. I'm not joking, I said firmly. I've been thinking about it seriously, especially over this past week. For both of us, this might be the most sincere form of relief. His face darkened. All this, just because of that one dinner? You could say that, I replied, and paused. But it's not just one dinner. It's all the dinners that would have come after it. I don't want to spend my life in the kitchen anymore. I have other things to do with the time I have left. His chest rose and fell with a slow, controlled anger. Just then, the front door flew open. Grandma, Nana, Leo and Mia came tearing in, squealing with joy as they ran toward me. I opened my arms instinctively and hugged them tight. Whatever happened, I raised these children myself. As distant as they had become, I still missed them, but the moment of warmth was short-lived. As soon as they saw Genevieve on the couch, they wriggled out of my arms and rushed over to her. Grandma Ada. They crowded around her, chattering excitedly, sharing anecdotes from their day, laughing and giggling as they leaned against her lap. The scene stung, quiet but deep. A few seconds later, Caleb and Megan walked in, and the moment they saw me, they rushed over and wrapped me in a hug. Mom, you're finally home. You look amazing. You must have had a great trip. We were falling apart without you. It's a good thing you're back. That cleaning lady we hired really wasn't working out. We might as well just fire her. Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, Mom. Genevieve helped us so much these past few days, running back and forth between the hospital and the house. We wouldn't have survived without her. Genevieve gave a modest, slightly awkward smile, but before anyone could say anything else, Arthur suddenly slammed his glass down on the table. The sharp sound echoed through the living room. Enough. His voice was low, but it carried weight, strained and restrained and full of frustration. Do you people even realize what you're doing? Your mother is not your maid. She just got home, and you're already piling responsibilities on her. Can't you give her a break? From today on, all of you go back to your own homes. Housework, childcare, elder care, you figure it out yourselves. Stop dumping everything on your mother the second something goes wrong. Arthur's outburst had completely silenced Caleb and Megan. Even I paused for a moment, surprised. It was so out of character for him, the man who had spent decades standing aside while I handled everything, never once raising his voice for my sake. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. I'm sorry, I said calmly, but I won't be handling the house's affairs anymore. From now on, you'll have to figure it out on your own. Then I turned back to Arthur. If there's nothing else, let's go to the lawyer's office tomorrow at 9 o'clock to sign the papers. His face went pale. You're really going through with this? He asked, his voice low and tight. Caleb and Megan, still shocked from the earlier scolding, now looked even more stunned, staring at me in disbelief. What? Caleb asked. Mom, you're getting a divorce? Why? This isn't because of Aunt Genevieve, is it? Megan added quickly. She's only been helping out. We've seen everything clearly. There's nothing going on between her and Dad. You're overthinking this. I shook my head. There was no point explaining anything to them. Let Arthur tell them whatever he wanted afterward. I looked back at Arthur, my voice firm. I've thought it through. I'm ending this marriage for good. Mom, you're 65 years old, Caleb said desperately. You've been a housewife your whole life. How will you manage after a divorce? Yeah, Megan chimed in. Did someone get some live your life idea into your head? Don't be naive, Mom. People are just after your money. Even if you meet someone new, Caleb added. He won't be as reliable as Dad. They'll be sweet at first, but in the end, you'll just be their caregiver all over again. Their words piled on, one after another, getting louder and more emotional. But all I felt was exhaustion. I am not asking for your opinion, I cut in sharply. This divorce is between your father and me. Neither of you should get involved. And for the record, I'm not helpless. I have dedicated decades to this household. Legally, I am entitled to half of everything. Plus, the 2 properties and inheritance from my parents, more than enough to live comfortably. I don't need your concern. That shut them up. They looked genuinely stunned, clearly unaware that I had planned for this long ago. I turned back to Arthur. So, Are you still hoping to change my mind? Still resisting moving forward? The air in the room grew thicker. I knew exactly what mattered most to Arthur Pride, especially in front of others, especially in front of Genevieve. So I added, just loud enough. If you don't want to make a fool of yourself in front of her, make it clean. No drama, no delays. Sure enough, he clenched his jaw. He nodded slowly, each word forced through his teeth. Fine. If that's what you want, we'll do it. You will get what's yours. I won't hold back anything. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for years suddenly lifted. I gave a slight nod. Good. With that, I stood up and walked out. Arthur said nothing, though his eyes were red. Caleb and Megan, however, appeared behind me, panicked and pleading, their voices cracking. Mom, what are you doing? You're tearing this family apart. Are you crazy? I didn't look back. I didn't reply. After I left, I moved into a fully furnished apartment near the hospital, quiet, simple, perfect, kitchen, laundry, everything I needed. It was a place Grace helped me find, the same young woman who once offered me a tissue on the bus. She had grown up in a small, rural town, put herself through college, and carved out a life for herself in the city. Strong, self-made, kind. After that one night, we had exchanged contact information. When she heard about my situation, she took it upon herself to help, finding me a place and even connecting me with a caregiver to help during my radiation therapy. Once I was settled, I took her out to dinner to thank her. It was a warm, simple, heartfelt conversation. The kind of conversation I hadn't had in years. That night, just as I was getting ready for bed, the family group chat lit up again, familiar names, familiar noises. Caleb, Madison, Megan, her husband. All of them now taking turns trying to persuade me to reconsider. Mom, you're too old for a divorce. It's embarrassing. Think about it. Once you're gone, Dad is still a good catch. He's got a great pension, he's handsome, and he'll have women lining up for him. You'll regret it. You're making a mistake, Mom. A huge mistake. I didn't reply to any of it. And then Caleb sent the message that stung the most. If you can walk out now, when we need you the most, then don't expect anything from us in the future. Don't expect me to ever call you Mom again. I stared at that message for a long time. Then, without hesitation, I left the group chat and blocked every number except for Arthur's. We still had paperwork to finalize after all. That night, I finally slept deeply for the first time in a long time. The next morning, I called a car at 8:30 and headed to the lawyer's office. As a courtesy, I even sent Arthur a reminder text with the time and address. I arrived early. At 9:30 sharp, Arthur appeared at the door. Only then did I finally breathe a sigh of relief. Arthur showed up with stubble and dark circles under his eyes, looking exhausted, disheveled, a far cry from the refined man he always prided himself on being. I wasn't surprised. After a lifetime of being on top of me, it must have been unbearable to suddenly find himself beneath me, outmatched in every way. We signed the agreement quickly and went straight to City Hall to finalize the divorce proceedings. As we handed over the forms, the clerk paused for a beat, visibly surprised. But professionalism kicked in right away. She looked at us and asked matter-of-factly, "Reason for divorce?" Arthur said nothing, his face a blank wall of indifference. I smiled slightly. If we have to give one, let's just call it irreconcilable differences. The clerk looked puzzled for a moment, probably wondering how two such well-put-together people could be separating so easily. But seeing how cleanly we had divided everything, assets split 50-50 with no dispute, she bypassed mediation and simply processed the paperwork. Once the proceedings were done, I turned and walked away. Arthur stood frozen behind me, his face even paler than before. I didn't look back to see his reaction. While he was still standing there, stunned, I was already in a cab, moving on. And just like that, life felt lighter, freer. The radiation treatments were tough, and there were days when my body ached with fatigue. But overall, it was manageable. And for the first time in decades, I had space, real, uninterrupted space to breathe. Grace came to the hospital almost every day. Sometimes she'd help me talk to the doctors. Sometimes she'd just sit with me during lunch, chatting, cheering me on with that quiet strength of hers. Other patients thought she was my daughter. They'd often whisper, "You're lucky to have such a caring girl." Over time, I got to know her better. She grew up in a small, conservative town where everything favored her younger brother. She worked her way through college, paying her own tuition, and built a life with nothing handed to her. She had been through more than most people realize. The more I learned, the more my heart ached for her. There was a quiet resilience about her, a strength I deeply admired. And somewhere along the way, I started considering asking her to be my goddaughter. How strange, really. This was supposed to be the hardest stretch of my life, battling illness and starting over alone. But somehow, it had become the most peaceful chapter I'd known in years. I spent most mornings at the hospital. The afternoons and evenings were mine free, unhurried. But still, the quiet could get heavy. The quiet made room for fears to creep in. Every cancer patient, no matter how strong, has that fear. I was no exception. The doctor advised me to find a distraction, walk more, get fresh air, stay emotionally balanced. Grace remembered me once mentioning that I used to paint in college. She gently encouraged me to try again, to pick up a brush, even if just for fun. But I hadn't painted in decades. I couldn't even remember where to begin. The thought of picking up a brush again felt foreign, distant, until one afternoon, on a quiet walk, I passed a small, vintage-looking art studio tucked away on a side street. It had that nostalgic charm, warm lights, soft music, and the unmistakable scent of linseed oil and canvas. I wandered in, casually at first. And there, sitting at an easel, was an elderly woman, painting in complete focus. I was captivated. I stood silently behind her, watching for nearly half an hour before she turned around. And we both froze. It was Diane, my college professor, the one who once believed in me more than anyone. She was in her 80s now, her hair white, her body frailer, but she was still painting, and her reputation had only grown over the years. When she recognized me, her face lit up with warmth and disbelief. "Eleanor, you still have that look in your eyes. I'd know you anywhere." She poured me tea as we talked. I told her everything about the years that had passed, about my life. She listened quietly, then looked at me, her gaze steady. "I always knew you had incredible talent," she said. "You shouldn't have let it go." I shook my head. "It's been decades. I've forgotten everything." She smiled gently. "Then you start again, from the beginning, just for you, no pressure. Think of it as a hobby, something that brings you joy." Something in me softened. For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift. That evening, I picked up a brush. The first few attempts were clumsy, my hands stiff, my lines shaky, the techniques long gone. I was almost ashamed of how rusty I was. But I kept at it. Day after day, I practiced. Slowly, steadily, I began to remember. I found my rhythm again, and with it, I rediscovered a part of myself I thought I had lost forever. One afternoon, Diane looked over some of my practice pieces. Her eyes shone with a quiet pride. "I always said you weren't just a good student," she said softly. "There's emotion in your strokes. You tell stories with your colors. You have depth." She paused, then added, "To be honest, Eleanor, if you hadn't gotten married so young, you'd probably be a professional artist by now." I looked down, smiling faintly. "I'm sorry, Professor. I really did waste the gift you saw in me." She patted my hand gently and replied with a warm smile. "But it's never too late, my dear. You still have time. You're just getting started." I blushed and nodded silently. And this time, truly, deeply, I believed her. Since I started painting again, my treatment days no longer felt so heavy. Painting became my refuge, my distraction, my therapy, my rhythm. The hours passed more easily. The fear receded, and even the pain seemed more bearable when my hands were busy mixing colors on a canvas. Except for the occasional interruptions, Arthur. After I blocked his number, he started calling from random ones. Always with some excuse, always some trivial reason. "Do you remember where I put my gray suit? Did you take that old photo album from the guest room? Which shirt should I wear to our cousin's wedding?" And once, unbelievably, "That flower you liked just bloomed. Do you want to come home and see it?" Sometimes his voice sounded thick with alcohol. "It's dark out. Why aren't you home yet?" Each time he called, I blocked the new number. Without hesitation. I didn't respond. I didn't want to. I didn't need those echoes from the past invading my space, tugging at my healing with threads I had already cut. I honestly didn't even understand what he was trying to do. He and Genevieve, after so many years apart, finally had no obstacles between them. Even the kids had accepted her. Wasn't this his chance to reclaim the love story he'd lost? So why did he keep clinging to me in these strange, clumsy ways? Maybe old flames aren't always about passion. Sometimes they're just habits, slowly fading away. I had almost dismissed it all as his inability to let go until the last day of my first round of radiation. Grace and I had just walked out of the treatment wing. As we passed the courtyard, I saw them, Arthur and Genevieve. She was sitting on a bench in the sun, and he was walking toward her with a bag of prescriptions and a folder of test results in his hand. The sunlight lit her face softly. She raised a hand to shield her eyes, and Arthur, matter-of-factly, pulled a pair of sunglasses from his bag and gently put them on for her. She smiled at him. It was a soft, tender smile, easy and natural, and I just stood there. Arthur wasn't incapable of being thoughtful. He didn't mind small gestures of care. He just never directed them at me. The way they moved together, the quiet ease between them, it looked like the end of a love story, the kind that's supposed to feel complete. I gently tugged on Grace's sleeve, ready to turn away. But just then, Arthur looked up and met my eyes. His expression shifted in an instant, and he strode toward me. "Eleanor, are you following me?" His voice was sharp, accusatory. "Didn't you say you were over us?" He grabbed my arm, confronting me as if I owed him an explanation. Genevieve rushed after him, flustered. "Eleanor, please, don't misunderstand. Arthur was just helping me. He came with me to get a flu test. I've been running a fever. I'm a little weak." I smiled slightly. My voice was calm. "Don't worry. There's nothing to misunderstand. We've already signed the papers. The divorce certificate may not have arrived yet, but as far as I'm concerned, he's a free man." As soon as the words left my mouth, Grace stepped forward. She was still in her hospital scrubs, and her tone was firm and clipped as she pushed Arthur's hand off my arm. "Sir, please, no touching. This is a hospital." Then she turned to Genevieve. "And you, if you have a fever, please wear a mask. A public space isn't your private living room." Genevieve blushed and took a step back in embarrassment. Arthur, suddenly noticing the patient gown peeking out from under my coat, went pale. "Are you sick?" he asked, his voice uncertain now. "What do you think I'm doing here? Getting a facial?" Grace snapped. "What is it? Is it serious? Should I call someone? Can I get you the best doctor?" I cut him off, my expression neutral. "It's nothing serious. I'm being discharged tomorrow. But thank you for your concern." I turned to leave. Arthur looked like he wanted to follow, but Genevieve swayed behind him, nearly losing her balance, and he had no choice but to turn and catch her. Grace watched him go, then glanced at me and raised an eyebrow. "That's your ex-husband?" I nodded. She let out a short laugh. "Let me guess, back in the day, you fell for that face, right?" Her teasing was light, effortless, but it sparked something in me. I chuckled, a real laugh. "Yeah," I said, shrugging. "You're not wrong." And in that moment, I understood. The things that once consumed me, that once left me raw and unsettled, could now make me laugh. Just like that, the bitterness I had carried for years began to dissolve. I was healing. Not just my body, but everything else, too. The next day, the official divorce certificate finally arrived in the mail. 40 years of marriage, done, signed, sealed, and delivered. Just like that, the chapter was closed. All that was left was to forget. With that weight finally off my chest, I did something I hadn't done in years. I posted on social media. A toast to myself for having the courage to choose freedom at this age. The news traveled fast. Relatives and old friends started reaching out one by one, full of curiosity and concern. Most of them didn't even try to hide their shock. I couldn't be bothered to explain, so I just gave them the same vague answer again and again. We just weren't compatible anymore. But no one bought it. "Come on, one cousin said sarcastically. "You're telling me that after 4 decades, you only just realized you weren't compatible?" Others were more direct, some amused, some condescending. "You'll regret it soon enough," one neighbor said with a smirk. "Just wait until Arthur finds someone else. Then you'll see." As soon as he remarries, another added, "You'll realize what a mistake you made." It was almost laughable how they painted me as the one left behind, a jilted woman clinging to a fantasy of independence, as if my worth was defined solely by being someone's wife. But I looked at my life, really looked at it, and weighed it carefully. 3 properties, plenty of savings, a young, kind, brilliant goddaughter who looked after me like family, a first round of cancer treatment completed, with promising results. The doctor said that with regular checkups and proper care, it likely wouldn't shorten my life at all. My days, it seemed, had never been calmer or more my own. But I didn't bother explaining this to anyone. I had learned the most important lesson of all. You don't owe your peace to anyone's understanding. So instead of wasting my time on gossip and judgment, I poured myself into my painting. Grace, ever my cheerleader, kept encouraging me to share my progress with others. "You should start an account," she insisted. "Not just to connect with other painters, but to show other women that it's never too late to start over. You could inspire so many people, women who feel stuck, unseen, forgotten. You could remind them they're not alone." Eventually, I gave in. She helped me set up an account and named it Inky Grace, a quiet tribute to both the art and the life we were building from scratch. I started quietly posting photos of my progress, my sketches, my canvases. No interviews, no self-promotion. Just the quiet intimacy of brushstrokes, colors, and layers taking shape on the canvas. To my surprise, the account began to grow. Slowly at first, then steadily. More and more people joined me, some fellow artists, others just strangers drawn to the serene beauty of reinvention. The platform eventually reached out to me for collaborations, offering ad partnerships and promotion. I had unintentionally become a modestly popular art creator, earning a small side income, but I never showed my face. Every photo, every video showed only my hands at work, or the soft silhouette of me painting in a pool of sunlight. Just a woman, quietly rebuilding a life. A new beginning, no noise, no labels, no apologies. And so the days passed quiet, purposeful, and peaceful. Grace's internship eventually ended. But because of her academic qualifications, the hospital couldn't offer her a permanent position, and her job search wasn't going well either. So I made a decision that surprised even her. I offered to fund her PhD. "Education is your passport," I told her. "One more degree will open more doors than you can imagine." She cried as she thanked me, insisting on writing me an IOU note, promising she would pay me back one day when she was on her feet. Around this time, some old friends started visiting more often. They seemed more interested in catching up on Arthur than on me. "Arthur seems quieter lately," one of them remarked. "He used to be so eloquent. Now he barely speaks. I heard that Genevieve would be moving into his house next month. No wedding, just a dinner with friends and family. But it doesn't matter," another added quickly. "You look healthier and more radiant every time we see you. We're really happy for you, dear." I just smiled. Their words didn't bother me. Not anymore. After all, Arthur was finally marrying the woman he had longed for his whole life. That was supposed to be his happy ending. As for me, I had long since stepped out of that story. What I didn't expect was what happened on the day they were set to move in together. I had gone to the hospital for a routine checkup, nothing special. But as I walked into the consultation room, I froze. There they were, Arthur, Caleb, Megan, Madison, and even Leo and Mia, all of them crowded into the room. I stood still, speechless. Arthur rushed toward me and grabbed my hand with both of his. "Eleanor, why didn't you tell me you had cancer?" His voice was trembling, almost breaking. I hadn't seen him in months, and now he looked like a ghost of himself, gaunt, exhausted, with panic and desperation etched into every line of his face. Caleb's eyes were red. "Mom, how could you hide this from us? This is cancer." Megan's voice cracked. "Mom, if Dad hadn't been cleaning the house and stumbled upon your old medical report, we would have never known. How long were you planning to hide this?" Leo and Mia ran over and hugged me tightly. I patted their backs gently and gave a faint smile. What was there to say? When your heart goes cold, you stop expecting warmth from those who have only left you in the cold. The doctor, visibly uncomfortable with the scene, finally spoke up. She is in recovery. Emotional stability is essential for her healing. Please do not upset her. The room fell silent. After a long pause, Caleb mumbled, "If we had known earlier, we would have hired help. We never wanted you to do everything yourself." Megan jumped in quickly. "Seriously, Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you. If we had understood what you were going through, we wouldn't have let you handle everything alone. Not when you're sick." Just then, Grace walked in, having just paid my medical bill. Hearing those words, her face darkened. She walked straight to me and held my arm gently. Her voice was low, firm, and protective. "Eleanor, what did the doctor say about staying in good spirits? Don't let these things get to you. Let's go home." I smiled at her and nodded. "Okay." That one word sent a chill through the room. Megan froze. "Mom, who is she?" Caleb looked equally surprised. "Mom, why are you leaving with her?" Arthur's face darkened, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto mine. Madison, who had been unusually quiet until now, finally broke her silence, with all the tact of a hammer. "Eleanor, I think you should be very careful. You know how people are these days. You have 3 properties and a lot of money in your account. What if she's just here for your inheritance? That money was supposed to be for Caleb and Megan. Leo and Mia are counting on it too. You can't just hand it over to some outsider." Before I could say a word, Arthur raised his hand and slapped Caleb hard across the face. A sharp, ringing sound filled the room. His voice was low, but it cut like glass. "Tell your wife to shut her damn mouth. I don't hit women, so I hit you. Don't you ever repeat something so shameful again." Caleb looked stunned. He turned and glared at Madison, who shrank back and fell silent, her face red with embarrassment. Her words had crossed a line, a very ugly one. Even I felt their sting. And from the look on Grace's face, I knew she was hurt too. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes flashing. My heart burned with fury. "Grace is my goddaughter," I said coldly. "Does anyone here have a problem with that? You've already accepted another woman as your new mother. Why can't I choose who my family is? I know exactly what kind of person Grace is. If any of you had shown me half the care and warmth she does, I wouldn't be standing here today feeling like a stranger in my own life. And even if she did want my money, so what? It would still be worth it. I'd rather give it all to her than to people who only see me as a burden." Without waiting for a reply, I turned, took Grace's hand, and walked out of the room. No one followed. But just before I left, I caught a fleeting glimpse of Caleb and Megan's faces. They weren't angry anymore, not even indignant. They just looked shocked, ashamed, startled, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit afraid. The days passed, quiet and steady, just the way I liked them. I thought they had finally quieted down after all. I wasn't going to the hospital as often anymore, and none of them knew where I lived. Or so I thought. But the next day, Arthur showed up at my door. When I opened it, I froze for a second. He looked even worse than the day before, hollow cheeks, even darker circles under his eyes, and his voice was hoarse and raspy. "I was wondering if I could come in for a bit," he said quietly. "I just wanted to see how you are." I hesitated. Then, without a word, I stepped aside and let him in. But I didn't offer him a drink or a welcome. He wasn't a guest. I hadn't invited him. He didn't seem to mind. He wandered slowly through the apartment, his eyes tracing the canvases on the walls. Warm-toned paintings, vivid brushstrokes, layers of color, my work, my rediscovered self. "Eleanor, you've really started painting again?" His voice was soft, almost in awe. "Your work feels stronger than before. And you," he paused, looking at me, "you look more alive, like the woman you were when you were young. When I was young." Something in those words struck a chord. Back then, I often wondered, had he ever truly seen me at all? He continued to walk around, taking in every detail. "This place," he said slowly, "it's warmer than I expected. It feels like a real home, Our old house feels like an empty shell now." I didn't reply. I just went back to my easel and picked up my brush, but he stood there, as if something inside him had finally broken open. "I'm not with Genevieve anymore," he said. "The truth is, I never planned on getting back together with her." His voice was strangely calm now, as if he had rehearsed this 1,000 times. After all these years, I realized it wasn't her I missed, but who I was when I was with her. That old youthful dream, not the person herself. She wanted something more, and I thought maybe I could give it to her. Maybe it was better than being alone in a house full of memories. But when I found your medical report, everything became clear. His eyes met mine. I realized that day that I never cared for you enough. I never truly saw you. I guess I've cared more than I ever admitted, even to myself. My brush faltered in my hand. I stared at the canvas, suddenly unsure of where to make the next stroke. He stepped closer. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," he said. "I never wanted the divorce. I really didn't. I wasted so many years. Can I have a chance to make it right?" My gut instinct took over. I shook my head. And just then, a single tear dripped onto the canvas, dissolving a stroke of color into a soft, blurry smudge, like an old scar resurfacing, quiet but undeniable. "I think that's enough for today," I said quietly. "I have things to do. Please leave." I stood up and walked him to the door. The moment it closed behind him, the tears came harder, one after another. Not for him, for me. For the woman who spent her whole life trying to warm a heart that never held her. Now that it finally did, I no longer needed it. That chapter was over. The rest of my life, whatever was left of it, was now mine. After that, Arthur seemed to appear everywhere. At the door of my studio, watching me paint in silence, in the hospital waiting room during my checkups. Sometimes, even outside my building, holding grocery bags, offering fruits and vegetables I never asked for. Over time, the kids started to tag along, showing up like awkward guests with rehearsed concern. I didn't let them in. To avoid their visits, I began to travel with other artists, plein-air painting trips, weekend workshops in the countryside, quiet retreats that filled me with peace. Then, months later, something unexpected happened. I got a notification from the bank. Arthur had transferred $200,000 to me. Along with it, a short message: "Sold the old house. Thought you might need this for your treatment. Arthur." I stared at the screen, stunned. The truth was, I didn't need the money at all. I had solid health insurance. My rental properties brought in a steady income. My art account had grown rapidly, and ad collaborations now brought in more than Arthur's monthly pension. I thought about returning the money, but the process was complicated, and I kept putting it off. I hadn't even replied, but somehow, chaos had already erupted on their end. Word got out. The kids were furious. They fought with him over that money. Caleb accused him of giving away their inheritance. Madison ranted that some woman who wasn't even family anymore would benefit from their future. They didn't see it as compassion, they saw it as a betrayal. And just like that, the family that once didn't give me a second thought was now bitterly arguing over my worth after I had already walked away. I let out a quiet sigh and returned the money the next day, but it wasn't long before Arthur appeared at my door again. "Eleanor," he said, his eyes filled with a desperate hope, "you returned the money. That means I still have a place in your heart, right? The kids say they miss you too. Please, come home. I'll take care of myself this time. I'll help with the grandkids. I really want to start over. Can we please try again?" I refused him, gently but firmly. But he didn't give up. Like a stubborn old student clinging to a final lesson, he kept showing up, every few days, sometimes even bringing friends or acquaintances to intercede on his behalf. I grew exhausted by it, so I moved again, quietly this time, without telling anyone. I dove deeper into my travels and my painting, letting the rhythm of the road and the flow of color carry me far away from everything I once tried so hard to hold together. With my artist friends, we would disappear for 10, sometimes 15 days at a time, exploring coastlines, forests, and mountains. I painted sunsets in Arizona, rivers in Oregon, autumn leaves in Vermont, and cliffs along the Pacific Coast Highway. And for the first time in my life, I felt that poem come alive within me. Only then did I realize how wide the world really is. My collection grew, my circle did too, and thankfully, the cancer never returned. In fact, I was healthier than I had been in decades. On my 67th birthday, I held my first solo landscape exhibition. It was a clear, sunny day. My old professor attended in person, standing proudly on stage to make a special announcement. I would be her final student. That one moment drew the attention of the local press, some art critics, and even a few national outlets. My story, the former housewife who rediscovered herself through art, suddenly became a headline. On the last day of the exhibition, as I was chatting with some guests in the gallery, I noticed a familiar figure standing quietly in a corner. Arthur. Thinner than before, his face etched with weariness, he stood motionless in front of one of my paintings, Mountain Falls. I walked over slowly. When he saw me, he looked startled, unsure of himself. "Is this the waterfall?" he asked softly. "You always said you wanted me to take you there one day," he added, almost to himself, "but I always said it was too much trouble. You went anyway, without me." I nodded. I had heard his health wasn't great lately, something in the early stages, still treatable, but serious enough that he rarely left the house, except for doctor's appointments. Just then, I heard familiar voices behind me. "Mom." I turned. Caleb, Madison, Leo, Mia. Their faces were a mix of shock and disbelief, clearly not expecting to see me, let alone at an art gallery hosting a successful exhibition. From their stunned expressions, I could tell Arthur had never told them I had started painting again. They certainly had no idea that the increasingly popular art account, Inky Grace, the one getting attention from both art circles and social media, was me. "Mom, you look younger than you did 2 years ago," Megan said, coming up beside her, her eyes equally wide. "You've been painting all this time? Why didn't you tell us?" Caleb asked. "Grandma, this is amazing. You're better than the artists we learn about in school," Leo said excitedly. "Nana, I think I want to be like you when I grow up," Mia added, beaming at me. I just smiled, gently, not saying much. Caleb and Madison looked tired, worn out. I had heard they got divorced last year, and from the way they looked at me now, I could see the questions floating in their eyes, things they wanted to say, stories they maybe wanted to rewrite, but I wasn't going to give them that chance. I had other guests to welcome. Grace was already approaching with a group of her classmates, smiling brightly and waving from across the gallery. As I turned to walk away, Arthur stepped closer again and said quietly, "I used to hope that maybe, one day, you would come back. But now, I understand, you've moved on too far. There's no turning back." I laughed, a full, free sound. "You're right," I said. "Because this is the life that finally belongs to me. The tides of life come and go. Perhaps we'll cross paths again someday, but when we do, we'll just be old acquaintances, nothing more."